what are some options for landlords with dealing with a bad tenant?
Okay, depending upon what the situation is. If you've got a tenant that's just a jerk, there's nothing you really can do. 10 of your 5-day notices, okay, you can still file up your eviction complaint, all right? The courts are still accepting filings, and that's what people I don't think understand.
Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Daniel, one half of the Kwak brothers, and in this video, I got a very, very good friend of mine, Mr. Michael Conrad, who's actually my legal representative for all my real estate transactions here in my home state of Illinois. And today, we're going to talk about landlord and tenant relationships in the midst of all this coronavirus craziness. And I got my very good friend here, Mr. Michael Conrad, who, again, is my legal representative in everything that I do here in Illinois. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and you're honestly like a wealth of knowledge. I remember even when I used to run like mastermind groups of 50 people, in Downers Grove and neighbor, like I've always asked you to come, and you're by far like everybody's favorite. Like you just had a wealth of knowledge, so it's good to be here. But before we talk about it, guys, I'm going to kind of interview Michael on what's going on right now in all this, madness. Don't forget to like and subscribe this video and share it, because honestly, this is the hottest topic going on in real estate right now. Everybody's got questions about this. So, Michael, first question off to you. In regards to everything that's happening, tenants are all over social media saying that they're not paying rent and, all these things. What's your take on it from the landlord perspective? Because we're going to talk about both landlords and tenants.
Well, right now, there's still an obligation under the contract to basically, which is your lease, your contract is your lease, to pay the rent. A lot of people will say, "Oh, it's an emergency. I'm not doing anything. What's going on?" And this leads to the pandemonium that happens. But you still have to realize, from a landlord perspective, they didn't cause this. This is kind of like an act of God. It'd be like saying, "I'm not going to pay rent because my landlord didn't plow out the parking lot and I couldn't get my car out." If you think about it, okay, the landlord didn't cause this, and unless you're going to be able to show that the landlord actually made your apartment uninhabitable for some reason, you're still obligated to pay that rent. The courts have said this already, and that's what's going on, even though right now a lot of the courts are shut down except for emergency matters, okay? And you're right, this is a big hot topic with everybody. I've gotten probably at least 50 calls on this matter, and again, the bills are still, taxes are still due. You got to pay the mortgage, you got to pay the utilities, okay? You can't just say, "Oh, sorry, what are we going to do?" And this is going to lead to a lot of economic hurt for not only landlords, but also for tenants as we're going forward in the matter.
Yeah. And speaking of which, you and I both know, because you and I are both landlords, there's a lot of good and bad tenants, and there's a lot of good and bad landlords. So what does this mean for the tenant side? What does all this craziness mean for them?
Well, the tenant side, again, the landlords are worried that people are not going to pay the rent in this, because there's another factor that's going on in here. And let's just say, let's not talk about the tenant necessarily that elects not to pay the rent, but how about the tenant that, hey, they're furloughed. Either they're not getting paid, or they were in a job where they've been laid off, whatever the situation is, where they're not making a salary. Now that's going to be causing a problem. The best thing to do is to try to talk to your landlords in a situation like this, open up a line of communication. There is supposedly coming down the line, unemployment benefits, things of this nature, where basically the government is trying to increase the unemployment benefits, at least on a temporary basis. Whether or not this is going to help or not, who knows? Yeah. But again, the landlord at the end of the day still has to pay those bills, okay? And that's the problem. And people don't look at it from that. They think, the problem is with most tenants is they think, "Oh, the landlord's making all this money." Well, as you well know, and as well I know, this is not something you're going to retire on a 6-unit building and say, "Oh my God, I'm going to go live my life in luxury right now." Okay? By the time you pay the mortgage, by the time you pay the insurance, by the time you keep, the lights on, and by the time you basically pay the taxes and everything else with an upkeep on the building, the best you can do is hopefully in this time, everybody keeps a calm method. I know, for instance, I just had a refrigerator go out on one of my tenants. Of course, good luck, okay? Yeah. They called me. So fortunately, ABT, where I usually get my stuff from, is still delivering, all right? So call them up, but when can I get it there? I'll get it there Monday. That's the best I can do with it. So they're out of luck, and they bought all the food and everything else, okay? So, again, communication with your landlord is key with these things, okay? Again, it's a two-way street. Yeah. Try to remain calm. Try to basically be polite with people when you're talking to them. This is what helps a lot.
Right.
Okay.
And in my opinion, you're actually kind kind of the best person to speak on this matter of what's so popular right now with the the virus and landlords and tenants. Because not only are you a landlord, but you're also an attorney. You're a legal representative. So or on the tenant side, and we'll move on to the landlords here. So for the tenant who they lost their job, because that's a lot of people's cases right now. They don't have income coming in. A lot of people, as you and I know, live paycheck to paycheck. What recommendation would you have, and legal advice would you have for the tenant who they don't have the money, the landlord is not willing to work with them, and pretty much saying, hey, if you don't pay, there will be consequences?
Well, here's the one thing, and we're not sure where the courts are going to come down on this yet. Okay, we do know that the courts are still going to uphold the leases, but the question becomes is these are extenuating circumstances. Again, this is not something that we see every day to day on the matter. So you got somebody who's lost their job. I mean, I just saw the figures. The unemployment was up almost 13%, basically this last time, which I just looked at. And those are just new claims, okay? So the idea here is there going to be a little bit of a time where they will get that unemployment check to go to the landlord and say, hey, I'm willing to make this amends, okay? Because it's one thing with the landlord talking to you, and again, if your landlord's kind of a jerk and doesn't want to work with you, okay? And again, it's got to be a give and take on both sides. That's the big thing, and it's a negotiation. They're going to come in and go in an eviction. First of all, the courts are not holding any hearings, at least for right now, okay? Dates that I had, and I've had a couple of evictions that were scheduled up, have been kicked out 30 days, okay? Now, remember, that's 30 days just to the initial court date on the situation, okay? So hopefully during that time period, you can get some money, at least maybe try to work out something with them. But, at this stage of the game, the big question is, okay, how do I pay my utility bills on this? Yeah. They've already said we're not shutting off the utilities. So there are a lot of things that have to go on. So whether you're a landlord or a tenant, again, you got to talk. You got to communicate with them, okay? And, there's going to be people out there that are going to say, to heck with you. This is what you owe me. That's it. Or if you're the tenant side, well, I'm not paying you because of the coronavirus. Right. Well, you have to realize it's like anything else. Did the landlord cause your illness? Good luck trying to prove that because you basically, that's what you're asking. So don't think that this is a free pass for you not to pay rent because of, oh, my God, somebody got the coronavirus and I'm panicking in my building, okay? Is that the landlord's fault? You have to direct this to the landlord's fault, okay? I don't see any of this happening because, like I said, everything is in an act of God at this stage of the game, okay? To the point where even the court systems are only emergency purposes only.
Yeah,
okay?
100%.
But, again, talk to the landlord. That's the biggest thing I can tell you, okay? So far, knock on wood, if you will, knock on wood, so to speak, okay? I haven't run into any type of a situation where somebody's approached me and said, listen, I don't have the money on the situation. Can you do what you got to do? Okay. I mean, in the past, I've done this for people. For instance, I had a lady that got injured at work. She told me about it. Her wages were cut down basically on the workman's comp situation for 66 2/3 of whatever it is. So what I ended up doing was I ended up prorating her rent to that amount. And when she got her final settlement on the matter, she paid me back everything there was. So again, it's how you treat people, and this is really where your civility comes in on the matter. Because, okay, if I'm a landlord and let's say you're the tenant and you've lost your job, all right, and I come to you and say, where's my rent? And you say, I don't have it. There's nothing I can do. For one, I can't throw you out of the apartment, okay? If I do that, I'm opening myself up for liability. And there are people out there that will try that. So if that's the case, they've opened themselves up for severe liability. Courts do not like that, period, okay? But by the same token, don't be a jerk to the landlord. Say, listen, I'm trying to get a job. Can I work with you on the situation? Okay. If the person has got half an inkling in this type of situation, then they try to work with them. Even if it's something where, hey, I've got a couple $100 I can give you, whatever it is. All right. And if the landlord's not willing to do that, you still need to take to minimize your damages as a tenant. Okay. There are, believe it or not, surprisingly, I'm hearing there's a lot of people that are still hiring right now. In different areas. I've heard that Walmart is hiring. I've heard, again.
Amazon's a big one.
Amazon's a huge one. Now, again, these may not be luxurious jobs, but if it's putting some money in your pocket and you got to keep food on the table and a roof over your kids' heads or whatever it is, you do what you got to do. Yeah. Okay. But that's half the problem there is people say, oh, well, I'm just not going to pay it because the court's not going to force me to pay it and whatever the situation's going to be. Again, you're going to get down the line, eventually you're going to get an eviction order with the sheriff saying, hi, time to leave. So you don't want that.
And I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of tenants right now on social media, and you're right, a lot of tenants and landlords are not communicating. And that's the problem. Tenants are going on social media and they're expressing all their frustrations out on a screen, and landlords are kind of doing the same. And that can't happen. They got to communicate.
Well, and that's, unfortunately, social media, it's a great venue, but the problem is it's turned into that.
Yeah.
It's turned into that. How do I vent everything that I don't like in the world, okay? But the fact of the matter is the problem's not going away.
Yeah.
It's still here, okay? The question is right now, what everybody's probably asking themselves is, how long is this going to last, okay? For instance, just take the schools, okay? I'm hearing now they're going to be shutting the schools down for the rest of the year.
Wow.
Okay. At least this academic year. So meaning that they would start again in the fall. Well, if you're a senior, you've now just lost your matriculation ceremony, prom, all that stuff. I mean, you got to look at things and say, okay, am I healthy first of all? All right. As long as you don't have it, then the question is now, what do I have to work with? Let's say you lost your job. Okay. What's out there? There are people that are hiring. Okay. You've got to still get aggressive with these things. It's not a perfect scenario.
Right.
All right. But again, and the landlords themselves have to be, all right, is the person giving me an effort, okay, or are they just stringing me along? And that's the question, all right? You got to try to be honest with people in these days, all right? Like I said, I've had issues where I've had people lose their jobs in the past because the economy's gone bad, not to something to this nature where you've had a lot of people being laid off or furloughed, okay? But you work with them. Hey, tenant comes to you, says, listen, I can't afford the place, okay? Maybe you've got a security deposit. Maybe talk to them and say, hey, all right, fine. We'll use your security deposit with the understanding that we're going to replenish this, or you'll get out afterwards, okay? Now, at this stage of the game, most people aren't going to want to move in these things. But I'll be honest with you, people are still moving, all right? I'm still doing closings. So, I mean, things are open for business with regards to that matter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you brought up a fantastic point, a couple moments ago. You said something along the lines of, tenants right now that eventually they're going to have an eviction. Something's going to happen. And I'm glad you brought that up because, well, right now, a lot of the tenants pretty much think they're invincible. They're like, well, they can't evict me. The courts are down, or they can't do this, they can't do that. And so literally they're just withholding rent. I mean, there's literally groups on Facebook that are saying, we're not going to pay rent come April 1st because, we know they can't touch us. And you as a real estate attorney and also a landlord is saying that's not necessarily the case. That's eventually going to come. And the best bet for both tenants and the landlords is to have everybody's interest in mind and just communicate. I love that.
Remember this, okay? Nobody has put a moratorium on paying credit card bills, your mortgage, anything like that, okay? Again, that's up to the federal government to sit down and say, listen, would it be a nice idea? Yes. And if it gets really bad, depending upon this, that may still happen. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, okay? But the point of it is that you don't pay your credit card bill, they're going to stop it right now, okay? Because that's the credit card company can do that without going into suit. Eventually, it's going to catch you. You don't want to have this happening. If you have something, though, where you're talking with the landlord and at least giving them something on the matter where they can pay their bills, because, again, they got to pay the utilities a lot of times. They have to pay the insurance. They have to pay the mortgage, okay? The bank is not going to care. They're going to still come after it. So that landlord eventually is going to come after you. So you're not invincible, okay? And wouldn't you rather, if you do have to move out, let's say you can't afford something, you couldn't have gotten it. So you work out a deal with the landlord that says, okay, you know what, when this situation's over or whatever the situation is that you may get yourself an agreement to, get out of there so it's not going to go on your credit.
Yeah.
You don't want an eviction on your credit whatsoever, period.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's very dangerous.
And the problem is this, too. Okay? We're still in March, all right? Now, if you're in Cook County, there's usually the moratorium for this where the sheriff is not going to get out there anyways, okay? But we're right around the corner from warmer weather. It's warming up today. It's in the 50s, okay? We're pretty much, for the most part, now, this is Chicago, so we could have a blizzard all the way into May.
Right.
But the point of it is for the most part, it looks like we're heading towards warmer weather, all right? Well, when this thing breaks, and again, I've heard multiple sides to it. I don't have a crystal ball, but there is going to be evictions filed. I'm sure of it. It's coming, okay? Because I've had people already that have done this and said, I'm not paying my rent. Okay, great. So now you're in the middle of summer. You get an eviction against you. Good luck finding a new place.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're not saying it to oppose the tenants by any means, but we're saying these things because as tenants, these are things that they need to keep in mind to better prepare and be protected. At the end of the day, you and I both, we both care for our tenants very much. We're willing to work with them. Same thing with my wife. You're the legal representative for my wife and her 4 units she owns, and she feels the same way. And I think a majority of landlords do. They're willing to at least work something out, but at the same time, they also understand that this coronavirus is not a free pass, as you said. So, we talked about the legal advice for the tenants in terms of what they should do in terms of your advice. Now let's switch it back to the landlords. In your, professional legal opinion, what are some options for landlords with dealing with a bad tenant?
Okay, depending upon what the situation is. If you've got a tenant that's just a jerk, there's nothing you really can do. 10 of your 5-day notices, okay, you can still file up your eviction complaint, all right? The courts are still accepting filings, and that's what people I don't think understand. They're not hearing things, but you can still file your complaints and get them basically served on the matter, okay? They won't hear it in the court system yet, but again, your case is now on file. Well, if somebody runs a credit background check on that tenant, that's already sitting there against them.
Oh, yeah, okay? I didn't know that.
Well, yeah, once it's in there, they'll look for all that. Okay, so that could pop up. Again, you can't throw them out because there's no such thing as a self-help. If you do, if you're a landlord, you're going to get yourself into some serious trouble. But again, try to keep a calm head about these things. Try to work with people, all right? At least most of the people that I've dealt with, they don't want to move, especially in this type of environment, okay? And the thing of it is are you going to always have that bad tenant that just says, hey, this is just an excuse for me not to pay rent? Yes, you're going to have that, okay? But then the question is if they will talk to you, try to ask them, well, why? Why do you think you don't have to pay rent, okay? If they tell you, well, because of the coronavirus, well, do you have it? Is it in the building?
Right.
Okay. This is, I liken this to almost like the marijuana issue now because now we're legalized in Illinois, okay? And landlords have the right to say yes or no with regards to marijuana, okay? And I know this is another one that I've gotten a lot of, all right? When it first broke, a lot of landlords said, no, you can't smoke it in the building, okay? Were tenants doing it? Yeah, they're doing it, okay? The better position, at least, and again, you can say, no, I don't want to do it. And there's a lot of people that don't. If you've got older tenants, like I have one building, I have a lot of older tenants. I'm not worried about somebody smoking marijuana in that building because it wasn't their generation that really did it, okay? But you always are going to have one or two that want to do it. And I've actually had tenants approach me and say, hey, do you mind if I do it? My response to that is listen, it's legal. I've given you this. The only thing I ask is that it doesn't interfere with other people. So if you're going to do this, make sure that, if your neighbor next door doesn't smell it coming through their door because you're blowing in the key lock or something, you know what I mean? Or you've got the proverbial Cheech and Chong thing, the cloud of smoke, so to speak, on the matter. So again, everything has got to be within reason. But, from a landlord's perspective, the courts are still open and accepting complaints, all right? And tenants need to be aware of this as well. Just because it's going to delay the process, remember that rent is still accruing. So you're digging yourself into a hole, okay? And if you're making a wage, okay, or you are an employee, there are ways to track that through Social Security numbers. You can do background checks and see where people are employed. I mean, believe me, it's going to impact everybody, for sure. And it's the idea that with a landlord-tenant situation, again, you try to be as reasonable as possible. Something breaks, you try to fix it, but hopefully somebody is not doing things intentionally. Because remember, you've got to live there too. Yeah. Everybody's living there together. And the problem is, if you get one bad person in a building, it could poison the rest of the building, okay? Meaning that now, once this clears, do your other tenants want to stay there because you've got this person who's being a jerk? That's an issue as well. And that's something that has to be taken into consideration. But, honestly, communication is the best policy with these things. I've been a landlord since '95 when I started. And literally, I mean, I can actually count on the number of times that I've had to go to court on one hand. I've had to go to court really one time with a really bad tenant, and that's it.
Wow.
Okay? All the rest of them, like I said, have I had people that have lost their jobs? Yeah. Okay, you can't afford the apartment. All right, I'll tell you what, leave it clean. And when I say leave it clean, I mean you could have eaten off the floors, okay? That was my deal with the guy. You had a guy that lived there for 7 years, and all of a sudden his company shuts down and he loses his job. Is that his fault? No. Did he do the right thing? Yeah, he picked up the phone. He called me the minute it happened and said, listen, I'm going to have a problem. I've got enough money for 1 month. And then after that, though, I want to stay. Do you have anywhere to go? Do you have family? What can we do to help you?
Yeah.
Okay. Because again, all you're doing by digging your heels in as a landlord is just exacerbating the situation. And then the tenant already feels bad.
Right.
Now you're adding kind of insult to injury. Okay. If you take the hard line and say, I don't care, it's your life, you deal with what you want to, nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that. I don't care what your situation is, even if you don't. You know what I mean? There's a way to talk to people, and that's part of the problem. Landlords a lot of times these days don't understand that, hey, they're people you're talking to, but it goes flip side. I've seen it both ways. So
yeah, absolutely. So you're saying pretty much the overall message is, hey, stop freaking out, communicate, and here are your legal options if things don't work out, worst case scenario. Do you have any final things, for you as a real estate attorney and also a landlord? Do you have anything final you'd like to say to the viewers in terms of what's going on right now?
You know what? The best thing in the world to do is to try to keep your tenants in the know on stuff. One of the things that I did is because, of course, I have a lot of older people that were freaking out with stuff. I basically disseminated a couple of things that I had found, public service announcements with regards to the virus, what's going on, okay? But they're aware of this, okay? A lot of people are not aware that, the courts are going to enforce these leases, okay? You cannot sit there and say, well, yeah, I got the coronavirus because my landlord gave it to me or he kept it in his squalor. This is not something, good luck with that one, okay? Because everybody knows what's going on. But like I said, the unknown here is try to work with the people if you can. We're all in the same boat here. This is going to hurt everybody. I mean, if you think about it, for the most part, they are shutting down the economy. They really are, okay? Restaurants, they got carryouts, that's it.
Yeah.
They're operating in a third of their business for the most part. Yeah, that's killing them. Okay, if you've got a nice sit-down restaurant, a Gibson's or something like that, what are you going to do? Man. There's a lot of people we don't realize because we're in a different ball game here. Is being a landlord and doing our businesses. It's a little bit different how we operate our finances. But there's a lot of people that live paycheck to paycheck, and that becomes a problem when all of a sudden that is disrupted. Because they are so tight. So the question is, do you give the person maybe a little bit of extra time if they're working? Okay. Do they have something coming in? All right. Are they looking for something? All right. And a lot of this is going to depend on your financial situation too. You know what I mean? If you've built in a certain amount of profit, well, maybe during these times that profit's going to have to decrease a little bit. But again, you don't want to put yourself in jeopardy so long as you're paying your mortgage, your insurance, your taxes, all that stuff. Okay. It's like I said, the county hasn't said, gee, we're going to let tax bills not be paid this year, okay?
Right.
That's not going to happen. I mean, the feds have delayed the filings and stuff and making the payments, so that tells you the severity of the nature of this.
Right.
The fact that the federal government said, hey, we're going to give you to July to pay your income taxes on this, that right there should tell you what's going on. But yeah, no liability as far as for payment of rent has been averted or even said we're going to forgive these people for paying rent. It just makes no sense why it would. Yeah. Okay. The landlord didn't cause this. Okay. Unfortunately, it is a bad situation all around. All right. And what are you going to do? You got to live with it. So cooler heads need to prevail. You need to talk to people. We're all in the same boat, to be perfectly honest with you, whether you're a landlord or a tenant, okay? And, even some people that are working, and there's a lot of people that have been furloughed. They may be still being paid, but the question is for how long? Think about this. If you're a salesman, I was just talking to one of my clients. He's a car salesman, okay? The state has shut down the dealerships. He can't sell. He doesn't get paid. Now, they're still paying him for a certain amount of period, but how much? Most of his salary is based on commission. Right. What are you going to do? So
I hear you.
It's a tough boat right now.
It is a tough boat right now. Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. Appreciate it. And for all you viewers, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, as it is a very hot topic right now. And in my opinion, we need the experts to be the ones to have a louder voice, as opposed to those on social media who claim that they're experts or act like they're experts. No, we need to have the actual experts like Michael, who's a landlord and a real estate attorney for decades long, to really be the ones to speak and be influencers on this. So thank you guys. Appreciate it. And thank you for Michael for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. I'll see you guys in the next one.